is such a delight. We have as our guest for the hour Dr. Susan Bradshaw. And she is a medical doctor, and she is a native of California, and she's a graduate of Los Angeles Unified School System. Dr. Bradshaw obtained a medical degree from the University of Pittsburgh.
Correct.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. So welcome. We're happy to have you.
I'm happy to be here.
And we have a very interesting subject that we're going to be talking about. It is, we can't start the show without just mentioning the horrific incident that happened late last night, and people are still dealing with it earlier this morning here in Los Angeles in the Thousand Oaks area. Here, once again, we have a major loss of life through gun violence. I've received several calls because I have been, once people found out that he was a Marine and that he was suffering through various issues, people called and wanted to get my take on it. And, you know, there's consequences of unfortunate consequences of war.
Yes.
And sometimes it spills over to where it's how can you say it? A person comes home but doesn't really come home. All of them doesn't come home.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be talking about this. Is also Veterans Day is the 12th of this month.
Yes.
Yes. So to all of the veterans out there, we want to thank you for your service, and we want to thank those that are actively serving. Our hearts are with the families of those who were harmed or life was lost in this incident, and it just opens up a bigger conversation about
it really does.
Weapons in war and violence and all of those kind of things. So with that said, now we're going to be talking about something else that is of vital importance. We're going to be talking about tobacco.
Yes, tobacco.
Okay. We're going to be talking about tobacco, and we're going to be talking about tobacco in a different setting. You know, this is the Raymond Hall show where it's a different conversation. So we're having a different conversation with Dr. Bradshaw, and she's going to be telling us things like how this whole thing got started, what took it to another level, the ebbs of when it was at its peak, and how this industry is remaking itself. So first and foremost, we want to welcome Dr. Bradshaw, and if you would, I wouldn't do you justice just by reading off the paper. Give us a little history. Tell us about yourself, and tell us a little about the project.
Okay, well, number one, thank you so much for having me here. It
You're
really
welcome.
is a pleasure. I see you around all the time.
Okay.
And I never really knew the impact that you had on the community.
Well, thank you.
I'd like to thank you for all your efforts.
Okay.
But like you said, I'm born and raised in Los Angeles. I attended University of Pittsburgh Medical School.
Okay.
From there, I attended Loma Linda's residency program in preventive medicine.
Okay.
And I started working with a physician. She is the director, well, she was the director of preventive medicine, and her name is Dr. Linda Ferry.
Okay.
And a psychiatrist came to her and said, you know, I noticed my patients were on this pill. They just stopped smoking. So I started working with her, and the medication was used as depression, and turns out it works to help people stop smoking. And that was about 20 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've been involved in tobacco prevention and control for some time now.
And is this a form of treatment that's still being used today?
Yes, it is.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's
All
a
right.
common drug, Zyban.
That stops people from start smoking.
It helps, yeah.
Okay. All right.
But it's an antidepressant.
Oh, that was primarily what it was prescribed for, but
Correct.
one of the other benefits
Correct.
is it helps people stop smoking. Right.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, so that was very enlightening, because a lot of medications, when they come out on the market, they're brand new and you don't know the side effects.
Effects of them, right.
Right, but this was great because we already knew the side effects because it had been out for such a long time.
Right. You know, that's interesting because you don't see it. I haven't, maybe it's just because I don't smoke anymore. You don't hear it as much about, you see all these medicines and kind of things advertised on television, and you don't see or you don't hear as much about, here's something that can help you stop smoking. So I guess you would have to have a clinical diagnosis of depression first.
No,
or
just
could they prescribe it for smoking as well?
Yeah, what happened, the first 7 years that a product is out, that's when it gets a lot of attention from the insurance, from the drug companies. So you'll see it on television, and they'll go around educating providers on how to prescribe it.
Okay.
And then after that, I believe they lose like copyright issues or something, and then other companies can start making it, so it's not really that push. And so we've passed the time, you know, but it was at one time where they were really pushing it, and we were training a lot of other physicians, and it was on TV, but now it's...
well, you got my attention because of a number of things. When you were speaking, you pulled me back to my own behavior. And I remember when I was in the Marine Corps, they used to give you these little, in your meals, they gave you this little pack of 4 cigarettes.
Correct.
Right, yes, they gave it to you.
Yes.
And then when I was in boot camp, they gave you tobacco.
They did.
And the thing was, if one person smoked, everybody went. They had a thing called the smoking lamp, and when the smoking lamp was lit, everybody went to smoke.
Okay.
And I was thinking about the culture when you went through all the things, and we're going to have an extensive dialogue today. In this, a lot of times you'll have a subject and maybe you'll give it 15 minutes or 20 minutes of that kind of thing. But we want to do the right thing with this tobacco issue because Susan, Dr. Bradshaw touched on some things that I had never considered. We were actually in session in the California Senior Legislature last week. So I'm in Sacramento. We got a break, and I'm in the garden that one of the it's beautiful up there. The Capitol is. And so they had this rose garden and things. So I went, oh, wow, one of those flowers smell really, really good. And one of the legislators, matter of fact, she's on the JRC. She says, Mr. Hall, that's not a flower. That's vaping or something.
Yeah.
It's a tobacco product.
Correct.
And I'm going, how could that be?
Yeah.
You know, because, I mean, just the smell of tobacco smoke is just like harsh to me.
It can be.
Yeah. So how did they come up with something that smells like a flower and people, oh, that smells good. What is that? Oh, that's tobacco.
That's what they're doing now. And that's why it's easier for youth and young adults to start using it because it's not a terrible experience.
Okay.
You know, when you and I were younger, when we first tried cigarettes, it was gross.
Right.
Now it's not like that. Now
got all in your skin, you know, in your hair when I had hair. You know, it was everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, and
well, see, now it's fruity and it smells like candy. It makes you want to eat, and it just smells good. They have over close to 8,000 different flavors available. Okay. And most of them, as you'll see in the presentation, they're geared towards kids. Bubblegum, watermelon.
Okay.
All sorts of things that
so
good.
Now in the presentation, does it cover, because one of the first things that you got me interested in was the history where you talked about the nightshade.
Yes.
Now that's in the presentation too? I don't want to get ahead of myself. Okay, all right.
Just briefly, but I like to bring in the history.
Okay. So explain to us before the presentation a little bit about nightshade and this family of plants and that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, actually, tobacco is associated with this family of plants, and it grows just like the bell peppers, potatoes, and the nightshade brand is very, very deadly and is very poisonous. And
the nightshade plant,
right? Correct. There are potatoes, bell peppers, and then the nightshade, and then the tobacco plant. They're all related. And the tobacco plant actually has been growing in the Americas for, they estimate like 6,000 years. BC.
Oh.
BC. So we have the Americas have a long relationship
with tobacco.
With tobacco. It's been here. It's probably going to stay here.
Right.
It's just that the way it was used back then and the way it's used right now.
Two totally different things.
Correct.
Okay, so why is it called nightshade? I mean, when you talk about potatoes and bell peppers and those are things that are like healthy that you see on you in they said that one of the healthiest things you can eat is a yellow potato.
Yes.
Potato and bell peppers and just all these things. So, what is nightshade? What does that mean?
Well, that's the poison that can be contained. Now,
inside of the plant.
Right. Correct. However, the tobacco plant, the toxin or the poison is nicotine.
Okay.
Okay. And so, in its natural state, these things don't cause problems. But when they're chopped up, people add additives to it. They process it. They put sugar on it. They put ammonia in it. It creates a problem.
It can get deadly.
Right. And so that's what's happened during the last since we started consuming it, is that the tobacco, the way it is consumed, has changed.
Okay.
And so with the changes in the way they make it, it's very addictive when you smoke it as a cigarette. And along with the cigarette comes a lot of toxins and chemicals that make it dangerous for your health. I
know after I started smoking, it was years. I mean, really, really years. That I continued. And one of the other things that you hit on was this target to the menthol.
Correct.
That's pushed toward the African American and the people of color community.
Correct. Vulnerable populations. So what the tobacco industry does is that they actually target everyone. But some populations tend to be more susceptible
to tobacco.
And another issue with African...
So they are equal opportunity offender.
Correct.
Okay. All
but
right.
one thing about African American men, especially the young one, the tobacco industry has done a lot of research. And they know that they are the trendsetters around the world.
Okay.
Regardless of what anyone says.
Right.
Young African American men are trendsetters.
Right.
So if you can keep them addicted, if you can keep them using tobacco... You'll have people wanting to use it.
And that shows out because it's interesting how at one time the bigger clothing, where boys were walking around holding up their pants with one hand, and we're going, okay, that's it. And then the next thing you know, these things are being produced in China and shipped over as a fashion. Just the larger clothes for a smaller size.
Correct. We went to Ghana in Africa, and they had theirs down too.
In Ghana. I am okay. All right. So the young African American male is the trendsetter for the world.
Basically.
That is interesting. That is interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here with Dr. Susan Bradshaw, and our subject matter today is tobacco. Now, we've kind of jumped the gun and talked all over the place. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back to the break, Dr. Bradshaw is going to go through the presentation that she prepared, and it's going to cover a thing. So the presentation may be a little in depth, shall we say? It's going to cover.
It's going to cover a lot, but hopefully it's understandable.
Okay,
because that is my purpose is to make it understandable.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
So
and
we're going to take a break. Get your pens, pencils out. Gear up your emails. Tell everybody that the Raymond Hall Show is on. And if you got somebody that you care about that smokes cigarettes, you know you've been trying to tell them to quit. Well, here's another way that you can talk to them, have a conversation with them about that very same thing. We'll be right back. as promised, we're back with Dr. Susan Bradshaw, and she's going to be going through a presentation on smoking with us. And she's been kind enough to bring some of the products that they are marketing now, and I'm telling you, it's pretty overwhelming. It says cigars, and I'm not going to show this thing because it shows a brand name and all that kind of stuff. But this stuff is far away from what a pack of cigarettes looked like when I was a kid, and it's just amazing. So go ahead and tell us about your presentation.
Okay. Well, do you want to start with the slides?
Okay. So, yes.
Okay, there we go.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, I want to start off with the history, just a little overview, an introduction.
Okay.
So, as we were saying earlier, tobacco has been in the Americas for over 6,000 years BC.
Right.
So it's been with us, and we have a long-term relationship with it.
Right.
And it was here before the Columbus landed on America.
Okay.
And as it turns out, the Native Americans have been using it for quite a long time.
Exactly.
They use it for medicinal and ceremony purposes. So the medicinal purposes, they use it to cure toothaches. And at one time, it was thought to be a cure-all. But again, it was packaged differently. It was fresh. It was put on sores. And it helped relieve pain. Additionally, more importantly, the Native Americans used it in their ceremonies.
Right.
And we refer to their tobacco as non-commercial.
Was that the product in what we heard as children as peace pipe?
Correct.
Okay.
Right, because it is because we want to respect their ceremonies.
Right.
And their practices, we call that non-commercial. So all of our efforts work towards commercial tobacco, and that's the tobacco products that
you see
Correct.
here today. Okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay.
So when Christopher Columbus came over, the natives gave Christopher and the other Europeans tobacco and gave them seeds. And they took this tobacco and the seeds, and they traveled back to Europe, and they started trying it. And it was introduced in Europe. So that started to increase the demand.
That's one of the ways it was introduced to the Europeans through
Correct.
the Native Americans.
Native Americans, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And through the travels back and forth.
Right.
From my understanding, there were a lot of products or goods that were going back and forth.
Well, we know that there was a lot of trading between the continent of Africa and the Brazil. I don't know what the names were then, but that place that we call Brazil. Mostly the brown man, the black man, the yellow man were already trading.
Correct.
For eons of time before the European man started trading. Okay, so go ahead.
Okay. So the people from Europe needed to raise money for the taxes that they had to pay. The people in the New World had to pay taxes to Europe. So they needed to come up with some sort of product in which they could sell.
Okay.
And so tobacco was really the first successful cash crop and commercial export to Europe.
Wow, that's incredible.
And this is the gentleman. He is cited as being the first person who was able to successfully put together to grow the crop, and it usually takes 1 year, and it's very labor intensive.
Okay.
And
tobacco
then,
is?
Tobacco.
Okay.
And then transport it back to Europe.
Okay.
And so within 7 years, he was able to make tobacco so valuable, it was called brown gold, and you could actually use it as cash.
Is that right?
Yes.
The colonies used it as cash?
Well,
the Europeans used it as cash?
Well, what happened, it was really in America, they would grow it and bundle it up, and then they would go to a person and say, "This is my tobacco," and then they would give them like a voucher.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and say, "This is how much it's worth," and then you could use that voucher and go and purchase goods.
Wow, that's incredible. Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So it worked well for the people in the New World. At one point, it accounted for like a third of all the revenue given to the IRS.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tobacco.
Tobacco, yes.
Okay. All right. So
Yeah. So, it started, but then there were some other problems associated because they needed more workers to work in the fields.
Okay.
Okay.
Introduction of the slave. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That's keep going. I'm going to hold my peace.
Okay.
All right.
No, actually, I just came back from Washington D.C. and I attended a Chocolate City tour.
Right.
And the gentleman took us to a port in Georgetown.
Right.
It was one of the biggest tobacco ports in the country.
Okay.
Which is right across from Virginia.
Right. We hear cotton number 1.
Correct.
And then we hear tobacco number 2, and then it goes on to talk about sugar and other things that were products that was produced through slavery and through the labor of slaves. And to hear that tobacco was the number 1 product that a person could use for commerce makes sense because tobacco is a lot more portable than a bale of cotton.
Yes.
Yes.
And it required a lot of labor
Okay.
because the seeds are very tiny and you have to do a lot to tobacco. And the settlers over here weren't having enough kids to help cultivate tobacco. So they needed help. And that's where they got help from.
Okay.
And then a lot of things started to occur when America went to war with the Europeans. Well, that cut off that relationship.
Okay.
And so that's when other products, such as cotton and other things, became more popular.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So the war contributed to them turning to other products.
Correct.
As opposed to okay. All right.
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot myself. Okay.
No, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
And so for hundreds of years, people primarily used tobacco. They used to sniff it, smoke it in peace pipes. Cigars and cigarettes were used later, like in the 1800s.
Okay.
And so this slide is created by the first cigarette machine, because initially they were rolling cigarettes.
Right.
And then when they came up with the machine, which was created in 1881, as you can see, in the first year, 10 million cigarettes were sold, and in 5 years, 1 billion were sold.
So from 1882 to 1887, it went from 10 million to 1 billion.
Correct. And a lot of that had to do with what you mentioned earlier. They were marketing to the soldiers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's something about. It almost like gave you some kind of little high when you first started.
It does.
It would give you some kind of little buzz. Or, yeah, so.
No, they say that tobacco, the reason why men used to carry a pack of cigarettes next to their heart, because it picked them up when they needed to be picked up, and it will reduce anxiety when it needs to. But now they've shown that really doesn't happen. But people do get a little stimulant effect from the tobacco.
Right. I laugh because I used to wonder why, if at the when you'd have a break on a forced march or maybe exercise or something, the guy would say, "Smoke them if you have them." I'm trying to breathe, and you telling me to smoke a cigarette? You know what I mean? It was really a interesting time.
No, it's also a social. People who smoke usually tend to smoke in groups.
That's
or
true.
They smoke together. It's
That's
like,
true.
come on, let's have a smoke break.
Yeah.
You know,
That's what they did. They said everybody went to smoke, whether you smoked or not.
Right.
You went on this smoke break.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they still do that today. So this is just something to show that even physicians thought that smoking cigarettes were okay. They marketed at music events, like the Cool's Jazz Festival, sporting events.
Right.
They were marketing to minorities heavily, and so people really thought that there was nothing wrong with cigarettes.
Okay.
But 50 years after the cigarette became popular, approximately like in 1950, then there were a lot of health organizations saying that, whoa, this product isn't that good.
Right.
It's not that
Something's
great.
going on.
Right. So you can go to the next slide.
Next slide, please. Okay.
So in 1964, the Surgeon General published something about the tobacco, the health effects of tobacco. And that gave the federal government the okay to start developing a lot of policies and regulating the tobacco products. So tobacco use actually peaked in 1950s, 1960s, and then it started to decrease.
Right.
And it decreased consistently and rapidly.
Right.
Approximately 40 to 70% of the people who used to smoke don't smoke any longer.
Right. I remember when I was a kid, my neighbor, who has long since passed on, Mr. Dallas, used to send me to the store to get him some cigarettes.
Yes. My aunt used to send me with a note.
Yeah, just say, so you get 35 cents, 30 cents, 35 cents, whatever it was. And it's incredible now. I know what it was. I have a friend that passed maybe 2 or 3 months ago. And I had this big conflict inside of me because I don't smoke. I don't be around people that smoke. And he had brain cancer.
Okay.
And he just wanted some cigarettes.
Yeah.
And I had two groups that were, now everybody's my friend, but I had two train of thoughts that was just adamantly opposed to each other. Raymond, he already got cancer. He already gonna pass on real soon. Give him what he wants. And then the other people, Raymond, you're gonna go to hell if you do that. And I'll tell you, that pack of cigarettes is in my trunk today.
Oh.
I bought them for him because, I cared about him. He's a good guy. But I just had this thing inside of me about, I didn't know whether to set me aside and give him what he wanted or, but what was the deciding factor was he was in the VA hospital. And I would have had to break some VA rules to give him them cigarettes. And I just said, you know something, I'm not his family. If that's something, he's got people closer to him than me. And if, but I understood the power then. Yeah. So go ahead.
It's powerful stuff.
Yeah.
So in 2009, the federal government passed a very strong policy, and they said that no cigarettes can no longer contain all these flavors. And so they put a ban on flavored cigarettes. The only flavors the cigarette companies could use, they could only add menthol and tobacco, because there is a flavor called tobacco that most people think that's what tobacco tastes like, but it really doesn't.
Wait a minute. There's a flavor called tobacco?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you can put, is menthol a flavor?
Yes.
So you can put the flavor menthol and the flavor tobacco in tobacco.
Correct. In the cigarettes.
In the cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You know the next question. Who did they market this to? To us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
keep going.
Yeah.
I'm still
And
learning.
so after this ban was created, they realized a couple of years later, well, the smoking rates aren't declining.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't really smoking rates, it was tobacco use.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were two reasons, not 100%, but there were two reasons that explain why tobacco use wasn't declining and why smoking remained the leading cause of preventable deaths.
Mm-hmm.
One reason is in 2014, they realized that the cigarette companies had designed the cigarette to be more addictive, more attractive, and even more deadly.
Mm-hmm. Can you see this? That is impressive. Designed for addiction. And this is an article that's published by who? This is out of June 23rd, 2014. Mm-hmm. And this is published. Is this an article that's published? Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes.
So go ahead.
Okay. And another reason why tobacco use rates hadn't
gone down,
were stalled.
Uh-huh.
The next slide, please.
Uh-huh. So one of the things was they was targeting children. Okay. And the second thing is,
although they eliminated flavors in cigarettes, they had not eliminated flavors in what we call emerging or other tobacco products.
Okay.
So,
okay,
they put a ban on cigarettes, but they didn't put a ban on all these other flavored tobacco
products.
And that's what was going on. So as you see in the slide, from 2011 to 2014, e-cigarette use increased nearly 800%.
Wow.
Hookah and all the other flavored tobacco products that we talked about, they increased. So that's what happened. You just stopped putting flavors in cigarettes. So they started putting more flavors
in
other products.
Other products.
Right. And they started selling it differently.
Now, are these products tobacco-based as well, or are they just a product of the tobacco industry?
No, they actually changed the way a cigar looks. The next slide, please. Okay, so this is the way tobacco products are marketed and packaged right now.
Today.
You know, they didn't look this
like
way.
Gum, candy, pens. That's right.
Yeah.
Candy or tobacco, right.
Okay, next slide, please.
So, wait a minute, back up. So, Alteroids, did I see, what is that to the right? Is that Alteroid?
Yes.
It's a tobacco product?
No, that's not. But the snus with the camel, the cigarette with a camel, the small can, and they have another snus. Those are tobacco products.
Okay. All right. Okay, so go ahead.
Okay, next slide. So the menthol has been one of the oldest flavorings used, and it's really important to understand how powerful menthol is. It was used for medicinal purposes a long time ago. It's very soothing. if you have a cold, you know how your mother rubs Vicks on you and you feel
Right,
better?
right.
Well, when they put that in tobacco products, it reduces the harshness, it numbs the throat, and it makes it easier to inhale.
Right. Okay.
So it just makes the tobacco flavor much smoother. Okay, next slide, please. And studies have shown that menthol smokers, compared to other smokers, are usually more addicted. They smoke less cigarettes, but they can't quit. It's harder for them to quit. And currently, menthol cigarettes are consumed in African Americans, 70%, youth and young adults, and the medically underserved populations.
Wow.
Vulnerable populations. So this is not your grandfather's cigar. This is what cigars look like. They aren't the big, fat cigars that are expensive and Cuban. They're packaged 3 for 99 cents.
Wow.
They come in different flavors. You can even buy them 2, 3, or sometimes just 1. So when they make it more affordable, then,
of course, more people can.
Correct, and that's
have
what they
access to
did.
it.
They actually changed the marketing of the cigar. Next slide, please.
Okay.
And this is another example of some more cigarillos. Over 2,050 flavors, most of them fruit or alcohol, like champagne exist. Next slide, please. Hookah is pipe tobacco that's sweetened with honey and other flavors. And it marinates. You know, they cook it like it's gumbo. They make it like gumbo. It takes a long time to make.
Right.
And so hookah lounges exist. And people go and they listen to music, dinner, and the women are belly dancing. So initially, when it first became popular, they would pass around the pipe.
Right.
But then people started getting herpes outbreaks. So now usually they recommend that you bring your own tip. But a lot of people who use hookah, a lot of people who use these flavored products, they think that it's much safer.
Right.
And some of them don't even know that they're using
Something that's going to hurt
tobacco because the taste, that harsh taste, is gone.
Gone. Wow.
Okay, next slide, please. And these are some other tobacco products. The BDs, the one in the bottom. People think that because it's wrapped in a leaf, it's healthy. But actually, it's harder to inhale, so you get more tar with it. The clove cigarette, again, it's, you know, it just eliminates that cigarette tobacco taste. And then blunts, people are actually using those to smoke marijuana.
Yeah.
And they tell me, oh, you know, I'm healthy. I don't use tobacco. It's like with the blunt.
You mixing the both.
You're smoking weed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
you're doing both. Okay.
Yeah.
Next slide, please.
There
so this
is so
yes.
much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So those were smoked products. So we call e-cigarettes, the vaping, the one you smell.
Right.
E-cigarettes, and they have just skyrocketed. They used to be simple. Now people don't even know that they're vaping because it's marketed and the product looks different.
Right.
So usually in these products, you have to add an e-liquid. Next slide, please. And these are some of the types of flavors that exist. Candy cane, watermelon, sweet strawberry, bubblegum, just as jungle juice, cotton candy. Okay, next slide, please. And this is the way they have it evolved, where they don't look like cigarettes any longer. Okay, next slide, please. And this is samples of, they're even imitating pipes and cigars, but they're vaping. Okay, next slide, please. People think it's safe, but it's not. When they were first released, the e-liquid that people placed in the tobacco in the vape product, the little kids were getting into the bottles because they didn't have a safety cap on them. And reports of poisoning among kids younger than 6 skyrocketed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, the e-cigarette can explode because people
We've seen
can
that.
charge them
Right.
and not charge them
properly.
They don't really know if they work to help you stop smoking, and the aerosol does contain contaminants and toxins. Okay, next slide, please. Now, this is chew. So we already went of smoke, vape, and chew. These products, no spitting. You just put them in their little pockets, and you put them in and you suck on them.
That's nasty.
Yeah, but
all of it
I
nasty,
actually
but,
tried it, and if you try the menthol, it does not taste like tobacco.
Is that right?
Yeah, you can't taste the tobacco.
I'll take your word.
No, really, the menthol.
At my age, I'm not trying to try nothing new like that. Yeah.
Actually, I had a sample, and I passed it out.
Yeah.
I never got it back.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Okay, next slide, please. And then these products were they were being tested primarily in areas like Kansas, in the middle of the United States. But when the e-cigarette started coming out, they kind of were pushed aside. But this slide will show you how the Tic Tac product looks just like the tobacco product.
Right. Right.
Okay, next slide, please.
Yeah.
Okay, so what they're doing is they're packaging them for kids. People and kids feel that they're safe, they're inexpensive, and they're enticing for kids to experiment with.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, next slide.
Let's do this. Let's go to the end. We're running. We just flat out ran out of time.
Yeah.
Go to your contact information because I'm sure everybody's going to want to contact you. Now, doctor, I'm not going to tell where she's going.
Okay.
She's going to be unavailable until we're going to say after the holidays.
After the holidays.
Okay.
Yes.
Because she's going on an extensive vacation. And but we definitely want to put her contact information out there. We just flat run out of time. It just happens when we...
Yeah, and this is a spoken word event that will occur for those of you who want to get involved. You just go to the Facebook page. What's menthol got to do with it? Okay. And it's right around the corner.
Right.
And the winner gets 300, 200, and then 100.
Okay.
In gift certificates. So this is something I like to invite the community to.
Okay. Now, if you're in Kansas City or Washington, D.C. or New York, and you want to replicate the whole thing, don't think just because we're sitting here in California that you can't get involved and do the same thing, the spoken word. Contact Dr. Bradshaw and see how the people out here did it, and so you can do it in your community. There's plenty of mechanisms to make sure that you get the money you need for your grand prize. I don't know what that is. I want to say GoFundMe, but I don't know what GoFundMe does. You know what I'm saying? But the point is, don't let, because this is happening in Southern California, be something that you think is not something that you can't participate. Start your own, even if it's in another country. Something that is targeting our children is something that we need to pay attention to. Okay. I had a conversation with a family member earlier today, and I told her we were having you on the show. Okay. And she said, well, hey, I'm going to listen because I've been trying to talk to another family member about smoking. And she said, I'm just tired of talking to her. Everybody has to do their own thing. That's true. Everybody has to make their own choices. But sometimes we are targeted, and our choices are by design. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah. I just thought when I was in the Marine Corps and I was in boot camp, I was just doing what a Marine does. I didn't know that Philip Morris had their hand well, Philip Morris, cool. I don't even remember who it was at that time. I just know that it's interesting to know that they had done enough marketing and had enough power to reach over into the active military. Okay. We're going to invite Dr. Bradshaw back with us because we just got through half of this presentation, but we've just flat ran out of time.
Okay.
So give us your last thoughts on the presentation and coming back and those kind of things.
Okay, well, what I recommend is people don't start.
Okay.
Just don't vape, chew, or smoke tobacco, especially if you're young, because the brain isn't developed.
Okay.
And that it can just lead to a lifetime of problems.
Okay.
And avoid secondhand smoke, because that's a problem. That's something we didn't get a chance to talk about. And then also, if you do smoke, call 1-800-NO-BUTS. They have free telephone services available nationwide.
Okay.
It's free.
Okay. All right. Well, you've heard it from Dr. Bradshaw. We are going to invite you when you get back. Please come again back to the show because we definitely want to finish this presentation and we want to talk further. There's so many things that we didn't even get a chance to get to that I wanted to talk to. I especially I remember there was this big fight about putting a warning on the cigarette pack. Yes. We didn't get a chance to talk about that and just some other things I wanted to share. Thank you for tuning in to the Raymond Hall Show. We have just about ran out of time. Again, our hearts are with the families of those who lost loved ones and whose loved ones was injured at the horrific event there in Thousand Oaks. We want to thank the men and women who are serving around the world in service to this nation. We want to thank those who have served. This is Veterans Day coming up. The holiday is actually the 12th. We'll be celebrating Veterans Day on the 11th there at Grant AME Church. I'm not a big promoter in bringing over my personal life into this show, but I'm a member of Grant AME Church, and we'll be recognizing all of the service of veterans there. Tell somebody you thank them for their service, and for those persons who come back but don't always come back fully, we want to pray for them. We want to pray for all of the people that and thank all of the people there at the Department of Veterans Affairs and all of the other organizations that work not only with the veteran, but work with the veterans' families, neighbors, and loved ones. Thank you so very much. And until next week, we will be right here doing what we do, trying to give some service somewhere, somehow. Have a good evening. This is Raymond Hall, and thank you for tuning in to the Raymond Hall Show. Oh, last question, last thing. Give us some contact information for you.
Okay, you can contact me at area code 213-351-7312.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Have a good day. Dr. Susan Bradshaw, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.